channel and hit the notification bell to be the first to get all my latest writing tips and videos. And remember, be original. Be a writing original. What's up everybody, Adrian here, back with another video of every horror genre and subgenre. So if you want to write a screenplay or a book or whatever you want to write and you're not sure what horror genre you want to write about, maybe you want to combine certain genres, maybe you want to find out about a genre that you never heard about before, well then this is the video for you. So this is it's part 2. We're going to touch on the monster genre and all the subgenres under monster. So let's continue right now. So let's dive into the monster slash creature subgenre. So existing from the early 1910s with the first versions of Frankenstein or King Kong, the monster genre is the classic of horror. It's also the more diverse and widespread horror genre, so let's look directly at its large subgenres compilation. Classic monsters and mythological monsters. This subgenre regroups the monster films that have either been inspired by early Roman, such as Frankenstein in 1818 or The Invisible Man in 1897, or by well-known myths and legends such as Bigfoot or the Boogeyman. We can also throw in the monsters from the fantastic world, trolls, dragons, etc., and those who become really famous in the 30s, such as the Mummy or the creature from the Black Lagoon, since they now have become a part of the modern mythical bestiary. So here are some examples of the movies in this subgenre. So you got classic Frankenstein 1931, you got the Mummy 1932, both starring Boris Karloff. So he's like a well-known, actor in these monster movies. You got the Leprechaun, that's in 1993. And you got Troll Hunter, which I never saw before, but you should definitely all check it out, in 2010. So those are some examples of the monster creature genre. So let's look at another subgenre of monsters called neo-monsters. Now I'll be honest, I never heard of this genre before, so let's find out what it means, because if you like it, then maybe you could write a book or a movie about it and incorporate that in there. So let's call it the monster genre by default. Filmmakers are constantly bringing new monsters to the screen, and unless they belong to another of the subgenres below, this is where they fall. Featuring very diverse creatures and film style, the only thing that bound them is their usual aggressiveness or taste for human flesh. So for example, basically neo-monsters are monsters that are not your typical normal monsters. Something so creative and out of the box. And something new, So a new creature that has been created, that has never been put on screen, that's neo-monsters. For example, some movies, Pumpkinhead, 1988. Now, if you've ever seen Pumpkinhead, it's a monster that hasn't been in any other monster movie before. Same with Tremors, which I love, with Kevin Bacon, And then Feast, I never saw that, but I'm assuming based on the cover, that's a monster we never saw before. And also The Host, which looks like something like the Loch Ness Monster, but it hasn't been many movies about the Loch Ness Monster because it's like a legend. Not many people have seen it, or it's just, it's only like word of mouth of what it kind of looks like. So you can really make it anything you want. So that's the neo-monster subgenre. It's very creative, unusual monsters never before put on screen. And you know me, I'm a writing original, and I love original stories or original concepts. So coming up with a movie or a book about an original creature, that sounds right up my alley. So now you know what neo-monster is. let's continue. The next subgenres of monsters is small creatures. So this subgenre of horror could be listed with the mythological subgenre, since the creatures it features are often derived from the fantastic world, ghouls and trolls, for example. However, small creature films are way too similar not to group them in their own subgenre. Since small creatures tend to be cute, these films often contain a part of comedy. For some unknown reasons, they are often quite bad and followed by a myriad of crappy sequels, Gremlins excluded. So here are some examples of small creature films. So you got Gremlins, which 1 and 2 were great. And I think a remake or a sequel is going to be coming out soon, but don't quote me on that. You also got Ghoulies, which was like very campy, like comedic, but also like, disturbing type creature film. You got Critters, which is kind of like Ghoulies. And you got Trolls, which again, it had like a hint of comedy, but very like gross or like very cartoonish in a way, like puppetry that looked kind of fake. But then you had very disgusting and gruesome scenes. So definitely check these out to give you some ideas about some, writing, a screenplay or a book. So now let's continue. So now we get into the subgenre of sci-fi monsters and aliens. So the monster genre has always been trying to justify the presence of its horrible monsters. For example, nuclear reasons, scientific experiments, evolved species. This subgenre regroups these films whose solid science fiction plots make them often closer to sci-fi than to the rest of the mediocre scenario monster films. So now we're dealing with monsters, aliens, and creatures, but with a sci-fi element. So for example, some movies you could take a look at is Them from 1954, The Thing remake from 1982. You could also take a look at a black and white original called The Thing from Another Planet, just to see where it all originated from. And it came from a science fiction book by Arthur C. Clarke, so definitely check out his work because he's considered like the godfather of science fiction, story genre. You also got Aliens, 1986, which is one of my favorite films of all time. You also got the remake of The Fly, 1986. Again, you could check out the original with Vincent Price. But those are just some examples. So I hope this is really helping, guys. So let's talk about the giant monster genre. Pretty self-explanatory, but initiated by the huge success of King Kong, this subgenre became particularly famous in Asia, and more precisely Japan, with the rise of Godzilla, 1954, and its 27 sequels. Or Gamera, 1956, which is a different form of a giant monster. So, typical of this subgenre, giant monster films are almost always featuring a scene in which the monster devastates a city. So, some movies you could take a look at is King Kong from 1933, Godzilla from 1954, Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, 1956. So not all of them have to be some weird mutated, animal creature. Could be a woman. And then also Cloverfield, 2008, which could also be a gigantic CGI monster. So, and then more recently, I can think of a movie called Rampage with The Rock, which was based off of the original, I think, video game from Super Nintendo or Sega Genesis, where you had a bunch of monsters, mutated gigantic monsters, destroying like city blocks. So, they keep making the monster movies, and they also did like, a remake of Godzilla, and a sequel's going to be coming out to that, and then, so there you go. So now let's get into nature and animal horror genres. So this subgenre embrace all the films whose horror can be related to something found in nature. Famous predators such as sharks, crocodiles, or inoffensive creatures such as insects, birds, and dogs. Almost every animal has its horror movies. Even if 95% of this subgenre's films features animals, a few of them have plants in it. The Day of the Tiffids, 1962, which I never saw. The Ruins, 2008, that was really good. Or even vegetables such as Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, 1978. And I guess you could throw in Invasion of the Body Snatchers because technically the whole purpose of that film started with plants infecting humans and changing them into replicas of other humans. So it all started with plants. I don't know if that counts, but some other movies you could definitely take a look at are The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock, 1963. Jaws, 1975 by Spielberg. You had Piranha, 1978. I think by James Cameron, I believe. He either did that or the sequel to that, which stunk. And that was his first directorial debut. And also Cujo, 1983 by Stephen King. His books, his novels. So just depends what creature you're afraid of. I'm sure there's a movie about it. So let's continue. So now we get into more specific sub-genres. So you got werewolves. So werewolves are humans who, after being infected by a lycanthropic virus or curse, which is the scientific name for werewolf, can transform into big wolf-like beasts. The transformation can be self-decided, or in most movies, occurring unwillingly during the full moon. Werewolf films are often quite dramatic, since the werewolf curse is often seen as a tragedy. One of the highlights of these films is the great human werewolf transformation scenes that they often feature. So some movies you could take a look at is the original Wolfman, 1941, The Howling, 1981, An American Werewolf in London, 1981, which is one of my favorite films, but the sequel, An American Werewolf in Paris, stunk. But again, you could take a look at it. And also Dog Soldiers, 2002. So this is pretty self-explanatory, but if you're a fan of werewolf films, then this is right up your alley. And finally, we're going to finish off with vampires. Vampires are mythical creatures that seem to have always existed in various folklores. However, the vampire concept as we know it really took off with Dracula, the 1897's novel from Bram Stoker. Vampires in horror films are invariably undead creatures thirsty for blood and vulnerable to sunlight. Additional rules then differs slightly depending on the movie. Contagious when biting, allergic to garlic, sensitive to crosses or holy water, killed by stake in the heart or decapitation, and cannot enter without being invited in. Now you had, different styles of Dracula films throughout the decades, but it always had to do with romanticism, like Dracula trying to be seductive or alluring to the victim. And then you had tween vampire films like Twilight and stuff like that. And then you had True Blood, which was nothing but sexual vampires. So you could check those out too, but some other movies you could take a look at is Nosferatu, 1922, which is the black and white, it's no sound. It's just black and white and no sound. You got the original Dracula 1931 or the remake Dracula 1992. You got Fright Night with 1985, which is a bunch of stories, but usually just connected with one main topic of, vampires. Or you could do 30 Days of Night, 2007, and check that out, which is a different take on vampires. But again, you could check out Twilight, you could check out True Blood. There's so many variations of vampire movies with different rules, but it all has that same theme of romanticism or sexuality. So, or alluring the victim in, stuff like that. So, hope you enjoyed part 2 of this video series. Please like, subscribe to my channel. Help me get to 100 subscribers. I'm almost there, guys. So until next time, thank you so much, guys. Thanks everyone for watching. Please like, share this video, hit me up on Facebook and Twitter, comment down below. Please subscribe and hit the notification bell. And also don't forget to check out my other videos. And until next time, remember my motto, where story comes first.